All right, hi, and welcome to Mass Hysteria on River West Radio. Tonight we're just gonna start off with some music and then get into some other stuff. Song is called "Transportation is Bliss" by Bliss. And I don't know, is it up? So. I think I have the answer here. Oh, I just hit my head on the microphone. Oh wait, no, I have it over here actually. I keep forgetting where I keep the answer. There we go. Whoa. Let's turn that microphone down a little bit, eh? That's more like it. All right. Actually, my headphones are just really loud. primarily from the century of the South. It's a BBC film produced by Adam Curtis. It was a real good nose for finding some great stuff. Moving into another Bliss track. Free at last.
Then decide whether people were normal or abnormal. There is a policeman inside all our heads. He must be destroyed.
At the forefront of this change are three new Val's groups people for whom personal satisfaction is more important than status or money. They tend to be self-expressive, complex, and individualistic. Rob is an I am me. I am me's are searching for new value, breaking away from traditions and inventing their own standards. Rob even invented his own name, Rob Notkus. Jody is an experiential. This is a group seeking inner growth through direct experience. Experientials aren't in one place much. This is the try-anything-once crowd, and all that activity takes goods and services. Their hobbies are hands-on, and their possessions are simple, but not always simply priced.
I'm a bookseller. I sell books. I'm a businessman. It doesn't necessarily mean that I believe in capitalism. It just happens to be what I'm doing now.
There is a policeman inside all our heads. He must be destroyed.
Hello, my name is Dave Emery, and in the next 2 half-hour segments, we're going to be discussing something which, in a sense, could be said to be the raison d'etre for this program. One of the reasons, the main reason that I have engaged in this line of research and endeavor over the years is to try to bring to the American people, or as many of them as I can reach, the truth concerning some very important events that they will need to know about in order to intelligently govern their lives, and some events which unfortunately have not received the attention due them. So what we're going to be doing this evening is examining part of the history of the influence that elements of our intelligence community have exerted on the news media. Specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the history of the journalistic community's involvement with the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, as a quick aside, our intelligence community is much larger than just the CIA. The CIA only gets 15% of the intelligence budget, but nonetheless, that very powerful institution, again, the Central Intelligence Agency, has exerted a profound influence on the functioning of the U.S. news media over the years.
And this clip is from For the Record, episode 57.
Goes to a member of the listening audience. This comes from the Name-Based Newsline newsletter, specifically issue number 17 from April and June of 1997.
And next up is Bliss with It's Not the Sweetness, It's the Sugar.
ANDT, a name well known to veteran researchers in this field, and some of his characteristically excellent work is accessed in the Name-Based Newsline newsletter of April through June of 1997. And once again, that's number 17. Daniel Brandt has entitled this particular article, Journalism and the CIA, subtitled The Mighty Wurlitzer. By the way, that term, the Mighty Wurlitzer, was the nickname given by former Deputy Director of Central Intelligence Frank Wisner to the CIA's media component, something that he was instrumental in developing. Now, for people who would like information about Name-Based Newsline, how to contact it, it's edited by a Steve Badrich, or Badrich, B-A-D-R-I-C-H, and you can reach him and or them at P.O. Box 680635, P.O. Box 680635, that's in San Antonio, Texas, 78268. Once again, P.O. Box 680635, San Antonio, Texas, 78268. Their telephone number is area code 210-509-3160, 210-509-3160. Fax number, same area code 210-St. Pete, 509. All the rest will be the car 3161. Again, fax number 210-509-3161.
And offers that has a product.
The address for them is info@PIC, it might be PIX, it's a small Xerox.org. Again, info@PIX.org, or perhaps it's PIX.org. And their website is www.pix.org. Or perhaps PIX, again, this is a small Xerox. My middle-aged and capable but failing eyes can't quite discern that. In any event, Daniel Brandt's Journalism in the CIA, The Mighty World Tour begins as follows. And I'm going to read this article straight through during the succeeding half-hour segments, as well as a very fine sidebar about the influence on the American news media of members of the Council on Foreign Relations, a very influential body, sometimes incorrectly represented in certain types of right-wing conspiracy theory, but a very, very influential body nonetheless, and one that exerts a powerful influence on the news media, and also one that overlaps the U.S. intelligence community to a considerable extent. Daniel Brandt's Journalism in the CIA reads as follows. Alongside those Greek morality plays and biblical injunctions, we are also reminded by history itself that the use of unethical means to achieve a worthy end can be self-destructive. Power, by definition, is isolated from the correcting signals of external criticism. Or perhaps the feeling of fighting evil fits so comfortably that it's difficult to shed even after objective circumstances change. The history of U.S. intelligence since World War II follows both patterns. The Office of Strategic Services, the CIA's predecessor, had jurisdiction over wartime covert operations and propaganda in the fight against fascism. OSS Chief William Donovan recruited heavily among social and academic elites. When the CIA was launched in 1947 at the beginning of the Cold War, these pioneers felt that they had both the right and the duty to secretly manipulate the masses for the greater good. OSS veteran Frank Wisner, W-I-S-N-E-R, ran most of the early peacetime covert operations as head of the Office of Policy Coordination. Although funded by the CIA, OPC wasn't integrated into the CIA's Directorate of Plans until 1952 under OSS veteran Allen Dulles. Both Wisner and Dulles were enthusiastic about covert operations. By mid-1953, the department was operating with 7,200 personnel and 74% of the CIA's total budget. Wisner created the first, quote, information superhighway, unquote. But this was the age of vacuum tubes, not computers, so he called it his, quote, mighty Wurlitzer, unquote. The CIA's global network funded the Italian elections in 1948, sent paramilitary teams into Albania, trained nationalist Chinese on Taiwan, and pumped money into the Congress for Cultural Freedom, the National Student Association, and the Center for International Studies at MIT. Key leaders and labor unions in Western Europe received subsidies. Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty were launched. The Wurlitzer, an organ designed for film productions, could imitate sounds such as rain, thunder, or an auto horn. Wisner and Dulles were at the keyboard directing history. The ethos of the fight against fascism carried over into the fight against godless communism. For these warriors, the Cold War was still a war. OSS highbrows had already embraced psychological warfare as a new social science. Propaganda, for example, was divided into, quote, black, unquote, propaganda, stories that are unattributed or attributed to non-existent sources, or false stories attributed to a real source, quote, gray, unquote, propaganda, stories from the government where the source is attributed to others, and, quote, white, unquote, propaganda, stories from the government where the source is acknowledged as such. After World War II, these Psy-war techniques continued. C.D. Jackson, a major figure in U.S. Psy-war efforts before and after the war, was simultaneously a top executive at Time Life. Psy-war was also used with success during the 1950s by Edward Lansdale, first in the Philippines and then in South Vietnam. In Guatemala, the Dulles brothers worked with their friends at United Fruit, in particular the father of public relations, Edward Bernays, B-E-R-N-A-Y-S, who for years had been lobbying the press on behalf of United. When CIA puppets finally took over in 1954, only applause was heard from the media, commencing 40 years of CIA-approved horrors in that unlucky country. By the way, I would interject that the 1954 CIA overthrow of Jacobo Arbenz
Bernays
had nothing to do with the overthrow of communism. Arbenz wanted to
let the masses ever have control of their own
society and to turn it into a modern,
consumers, a way of giving people the illusion
specifically modern,
while allowing the elite to continue managing society.
thousands of acres of United Fruit-owned land. That obviously did not sit well with the United Fruit. They then used their influence within the national security establishment, the CIA, to overthrow Jacobo Arbenz. Continuing. Of acres of United Fruit-owned land. That obviously did not sit well with the United Fruit. They then used their influence within the national
let the masses ever have
CIA to
control of their own
overthrow
lives.
Jacobo Arbenz. Continuing.
Consumers is a way of giving people the illusion while allowing a responsible elite to continue managing society.
As citizens, well, people have been reduced, most people have been reduced to a market demographic. They're consumers. They're not citizens, you know. In no way are they citizens. You know, no matter how active they are within the system is the problem. But they're prisoners of it. They don't even see that it owns their soul. That the very things they see as solutions are also part of it. Buy green, do this. You know, capitalism offers you, it co-opts everything and offers it as a product, a consumer identity, and so on. So that's why I say they're prisoners, willing prisoners of their captors. They totally identify, for instance, the bailout of the banks. We cannot live without corporations. Corporations feed us. Corporations give us health. Corporations give us transportation. We cannot let them die. We cannot let the banks die. And so just like the Egyptians making their offerings or the Aztecs atop the temples, we get the bailout. The extracted sweat of the people is offered up, reserved to vast corporations. Because, you know, as soul prisoners, you know, they will not die if the corporations die, but they believe they will. You know, the evidence around them, you know, tells them, oh, I will die if the banks fail. I will, you know what I mean. The world does not know it will disappear. Well, no, 6% of the world will have their ass up the creek real quick, but the rest of the world is not as affected. You know, if the banks go broke in the third world, gee, what else is there? Yes, it causes a lot of pain and inconvenience, but life is full of pain and inconvenience.
Est became hugely successful. Singers, film stars, and hundreds of thousands of ordinary Americans underwent the training in the 1970s. But in the process, the political idea that had begun the movement for personal transformation began to disappear. The original vision had been that through discovering and expressing the self, a new culture would be born, one that would challenge the power of the state.
We will not let them separate our culture from our politics. We are a people. We are all together.
But what was now emerging was the idea that people could be happy simply within themselves, and that changing society was irrelevant.
Whereupon the New York Times and Washington Post began naming more names. By then, the world was
Searching for new values, breaking away from traditions and inventing their own standards. Rob even invented his own name, Rob Noxious. Jody is an experiential. This is a group seeking inner growth through direct experience. Experientials aren't in one place much. This is the try anything once crowd. All that activity takes goods and services.
Americans learned something of their secret history. From the perspective of 20 additional years, the results were mixed and much remained secret. But it's scary to think of where we might be now if the counterculture had never happened. During the last half of those 10 years, sandwiched between Watergate coverage on one end and congressional investigations of the CIA on the other, the media showed some interest in examining their own intelligence connections. The first shoe was dropped by Jack Anderson in late August of 1973 when he revealed that Seymour Freiden, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, F-R-E-I-D-I-N.
And next up we've got Overlay with Mostly Misty.
Freiden, already in the news because the Republicans paid him $10,000 in 1972 to spy on the Democrats, confirmed Anderson's story. At that point, William Colby, the new
Consumers is a way of giving people the illusion of control while allowing the
Junkie is an
responsible elite
experiential.
to continue
This is a
managing
group
society.
seeking inner growth through direct experience. Experientials aren't in one place much. This is the try anything once crowd. All that activity takes good.
The original idea had been that the liberation of the self would create new kinds of people, free of social constraint. That radical change had happened. But while the new beings felt liberated, they had become increasingly dependent for their identity on business. The corporations had realized that it was in their interests to encourage people to feel that they were unique individuals and then offer them ways to express that individuality. A world in which people felt they were rebelling against conformity was not a threat to business, but its greatest opportunity. They no longer want anything. Place them within the narrow structure of American society. Instead, what they wanted were products that would express their individuality, their difference in a conformist world. The very thing U.S. corporations did not make.
Products have always had an emotion. What was new was individuality. The idea that this product expresses me, and whether it was a small European car, the particular music system, your presentation of self, your clothing.
For immediate energy from our muscles and
these become ways in which people can expend their money in order to say to the world who they are. But the manufacturers, they had no with consumers.
Major advertisers set up what they called operating models to try and work out how to appeal to these new individuals. The head of one agency sent a memo to all staff. We must conform to the new non-conformers. We must listen to the music of Bobby Dylan and go to the theatre. But the problem was, few of the self-expressive individuals would take part in focus groups. The advertisers were left to their own devices.
There's a new cereal that tastes so right, makes you dance, it's a way out of sight. This tasty little spray of malted, it's crispy and it's crunchy and it tastes so neat.
And there was an even more serious one. To make products that express themselves, being created variety. The systems of mass production had been developed in America large numbers of the same probability. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us. The first thing they were going to do was to find a way of getting inside their heads, to discover what these new beings wanted in order to be us.
Take this day and you say, when I shave every morning, I look in that mirror and I say to myself, I really say this, and then nobody is going to ruin this day for you, Wayne Dyer. Nobody.
Also, there are executives and retired executives for road and quoting who could help dispel the cloud hanging over the press by coming forward to tell the arrangements we made with the CIA. Little has changed since 1974. Michael J. Harrington, a Democratic congressman from Massachusetts, told his closed-door testimony about CIA involvement in the 1973 coup in Chile. Harrington soon found himself the target of a former ethics committee investigation. Now, Shore was also their target. Apparently, Congress was fearful that the executive branch might paint them as bungling and irresponsible when it came to keeping secrets, and then use this as a club to deprive them of access to information. If Congress felt this way, it was more than simple paranoia. In 1976, the CIA began tracking up their Wurlitzer on the matter of Richard Welch, a station chief in Athens who was assassinated by urban guerrillas at the end of 1975. The CIA's exploitation of this timely tragedy had both an immediate target and a general target. Ostensibly, the CIA was complaining about an obscure Washington magazine called Counter Spy, which had been printing CIA names. In the same spirit, Philip Agee's just-published Diary of CIA Tricks in Latin America was loaded with names and was already an international sensation. But the general target of this campaign was more important. The CIA managed to change the nature of the debate. Suddenly, it was no longer a question of what dirty work the CIA might be doing, but rather a question of what happens when the press recklessly endangers the lives of our brave boys overseas. By the way, the Agee book is on company business. It's called a CIA diary. Actually, I may be misrepresenting the title on company business, but it's called a CIA diary. That's the subtitle. Off the top of my head, I've forgotten the title of Philip Agee's first book. He also has a second follow-up volume called Dirty Tricks. By the way, note again that the CIA has only 15% of the overall intelligence budget, so in assessing CIA deeds and misdeeds, one should not make the mistake of seeing the CIA as the most important part or even the bulk of U.S. intelligence. Again, it only gets 15% of the intelligence budget. One does not hear, for example, of the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Army Security Agency, the Office of Naval Intelligence, the Office of Special Investigations, the OSI, Air Force Intelligence, all of which are very, very powerful. Some, in my opinion, more so than the CIA. Continuing. The fact that Welch's name had been published by the East Germans 5 years earlier, and that he could be identified as a CIA officer from his listing in the unclassified 1973 State Department Biographic Register were both ignored. In any case, it was hardly a secret in Athens. The group that killed Welch had been stalking his predecessor, Stacy Holtz, H-U-L-S-E, until Welch moved into the Holtz residence 5 months earlier. Colby eventually admitted to a House subcommittee that Welch's cover was inexcusably weak and that the publication of his name in an Athens newspaper had only an indirect effect on his assassination. Colby could say this 2 years later because by then his comments were destined for
And we're moving into Overloo with Petite Serpent.
Was already lost. In 1982, Congress passed a controversial new law that made publication of CIA names a felony under certain conditions. Although these conditions rarely apply to journalists, the wide coverage on this issue served to intimidate most publishers and editors. Today, the CIA, which once issued an automatic no comment when asked anything by reporters, is playing an adept game of soft cop, hard cop public relations. In 1991, an internal CIA task force recommended a more active posture by the public affairs officer when responding to requests for assistance. That year, they handled 3,369 telephone inquiries from reporters, provided 174 unclassified background briefings for them at headquarters, and arranged 164 interviews with senior agency officials. The quote, hard cop, was discovered by Katrina Vandenheuvel, editor of the name. By the way, remember the name Katrina Vandenheuvel? We'll see her name later on in a sidebar provided by David Grant as one of a number of journalists who are affiliated with the Council on Foreign Relations. Again, a very powerful body which exerts powerful influence over American national security and journalistic and political policy. Continuing. Katrina Vandenheuvel, Daniel Brand writes, in 1995, she was telephoned by Jim Swayze, SWASEY, CIA Deputy Director of Public Affairs, who strongly objected to the editorial because it included the names of 9 former station chiefs in Guatemala. Reuters was persuaded by Swayze's colleagues to run the story without the names. The final months of 1977 produced 3 significant pieces of journalism on the CIA and the media, just before the issue was abandoned altogether. The first by Joe Clento and Dave Roman reported the connections between Copley Press.
There is a policeman inside all our heads. He must be destroyed. And that policeman is going to be destroyed by overthrowing the state and the corporations.
Was used as a CIA front in Latin America.
There is a policeman inside all our heads. He must be
San Diego
destroyed.
Union and Evening News.
That policeman is going to be destroyed by overthrowing the state and the corporations.
No less than 23 news service employees.
There is a policeman inside all our heads. He must be destroyed.
James Copley,
That policeman is going to be destroyed by overthrowing the state and the corporations. There is a policeman inside all our heads. He must be destroyed. And that policeman is going to be destroyed by overthrowing the state and the corporations. There is a policeman inside all our heads. He must be destroyed. That policeman is going to be destroyed by overthrowing the state and the corporations.
In one step beyond shows most of the lecture tapes and now the archive documentary archives over the years as well.
Maybe at the end. I think I have a few minutes at the end and I don't have anything for right now. I'm not sure I got such a little once in a while I have people on talk about stuff. Oh yeah? Oh yeah, I have one of those. Yeah, those are awesome. I found a good one. I was like, what is this? This is awesome. Yeah, I also like I run effects on audio and stuff, so that's what I'm usually futzing with. Yeah.
You can point to web browser, www.amcc.org, and look for the public affairs section, and then the fire information to be perfectly readily available in the public affairs section. So again, point to web browser, hey, www.amcc.org.
those in power would now control the self, not by repressing it, but by feeding its infinite desires. In reality, we, like the politicians, have become the slaves of our own desires. We have forgotten that we can be more than that, that there are other sides to human nature.
You know, I think that the most obvious difficult transition for us is going to be what entails the destiny of suburbia, you know, and how we're going to cope with our inability to live in this arrangement that we constructed for ourselves, this elaborate suburban arrangement. I really have no idea how we're going to manage that. I can only think that it will entail a lot of loss, economic loss, and eventually, you know, maybe some fighting over the table scraps of the 20th century. It's going to be very difficult for us to get back to farming at a scale that is appropriate to what our conditions present, because so many of those skills have been lost. But perhaps even more importantly, the difficulty of reallocating land, you know, in smaller compartments to people who know what to do with it. I mean, right now, an awful lot of the ag land and parkland in America, you know, in the grain belt, you know, in the center of the country, is donated in a very large chunk, in some cases by corporations. And I really don't know how we're going to adapt to the need to do this on a smaller scale.
There's polling data in this country. They've asked Americans every year since the end of World War II, are you happy with your life? And the number of Americans who say, I'm very happy with my life, peaks in 1956 and goes downhill since. And that's odd because in that same 50 years, we've trebled our material standard of living. If the economy worked the way we intuitively think it does, those curves shouldn't go that way. It turns out that around the world, once you get past a per capita income of about $10,000 per year, any correlation between more and better scatters, ceases. The plot goes in all different directions. And, you know, that's something we need to know. It's a basic fact about human beings that's as important as knowing, you know, what temperature water freezes at. Because we have geared so much of our life as a country to an endlessly expanding economy past the point where it's producing anything in terms of satisfaction. And since it's also producing great negative consequences, environmentally in particular, it would be good to get a hold of that.
The basic fundamental way money has been sort of constructed has a deep flaw in it. You know, we created a system that's basically debt-based. If you go to the bank, you know, they check your credit ratings, if you can compete aggressively in our contemporary society, and then they loan you a certain amount of money, but so they don't create the extra money and interest that you have to bring back. Then you have to go into society and compete with everybody else in the society to bring back that interest, that extra money. So that creates a situation where there's this constantly expanding bubble of debt. And it also creates a mentality of artificial scarcity. And you know, I think what's happening now is that, you know, the debt-based expansion, so the basis of the capitalist system, is no longer able to function. And the reasons for that are, I think, twofold. One is that we've seen a globalization of the marketplace. You know, if you look at earlier analyses of capitalism, including like Lenin's and Marx's and so on, you know, it requires constant expansion and penetration into the markets to survive. And so that's reached its limit. And one answer to that was like Naomi Klein, the shock doctrine, talked about how they began to, you know, capitalists began almost like look forward to this destruction, like hurricanes and terrorist attacks, that allowed them to rebuild, you know, aspects of their own society as if they were new markets, you know.
And this is Daniel Pinchbeck from the C-Realm podcast, and we have another clip coming up. I'm not sure exactly
so in a way, like having a debt-fueled expansion model
of
economics is only going to work as there's an increasing abundance of cheap oil, cheap energy. And so now that energy is no longer available, there's kind of a law of thermodynamics in effect, where, you know, the debt is just not going to be recoupable. You know, so the entire debt-based structure of the system is now collapsing. But in a way, I think it's like one of the best things that could possibly happen to us at the moment, because first of all, the post-industrial economy is literally destroying the ecosystems of the planet and immiserating vast populations. So for it to not be able to continue would be a good thing, and for this to happen, without nuclear war or martial law, which it might be on the cards, but it seems to be happening in an almost kind of like sudden deflation of the whole hypertrophied enterprise. So I think there's a potential here for a new proposition
LSD,
of
along
value.
with Buddhism and psychology, but particularly LSD.
Hypertrophied enterprise. So I think there's a potential here for a new proposition of value to sort of enter the equation.
I've never made any bones about it. LSD, along with Buddhism and psychology, but particularly LSD, the other two wouldn't have even happened, was the Great Awakening for me. I was a rural kid living in a small town, and I'd read about it when I was in the 9th grade and wanted some. And I'd read about it in Life magazine, this terrifying drug, and hell, I'd never even smoked a cigarette in my life, but I wanted some. And anyway, it finally came along from Johns Hopkins. A friend of mine who was being treated for his homosexuality with LSD, we continued his treatment as long as we could possibly push it, and he would bring it. And it was legal. It was the first 3 years I took it. It was legal. And from the very first time I took it, for once I saw the world, and I saw how malleable reality was. And when it was done, I sat and cried because I knew life could be this good. I knew there was more meaning there. There was more to be felt, to live, know, and to be, And so nothing was ever the same after that, because I had applied myself like so many other people, not because it was LSD. Same way with ayahuasca until very recently. I had a big refrigerator full of it, and I haven't taken it in years. But there seems to be a lot of interest in it. Anyway, the expansion of consciousness, you have to call it that, realizing how malleable and that reality is a consensus agreement between people. You could also agree on something else.
There is a policeman inside all our heads. He must be destroyed.
Psychologically, for jobs, it's possible to agree on something else, and maybe that's why I like the third world in my later years, is that they have agreed on something else.
And that's our show for tonight, folks. Have a good one.